James sat at the dining table, his fingers wrapped around a cooling cup of coffee, watching Olivia across from him. She looked effortlessly composed, her manicured nails tapping against her wine glass, her smirk a mixture of amusement and condescension. The warm glow of the chandelier cast a golden hue over the room, making everything seem picture perfect. But James knew better. There was a sickness in his gut, a deep, gnawing unease that had refused to leave him for months. It started as a whisper of suspicion, easily ignored, but had grown into something he could no longer silence. "You're being ridiculous, James," Olivia said, shaking her head with a small laugh. "I don't know why you're acting like this, but it's honestly a little embarrassing." She sipped her wine, her movements slow, deliberate, as if she had all the time in the world. James had seen this act before. He knew how this would go. She would make him feel foolish, irrational. She would twist the truth so smoothly that even he would start to doubt his own instincts. But not this time. He forced a small, knowing smile, stirring his coffee absently. "Am I?" he asked, his voice calm, almost casual. "You really think I'm just imagining things?" Olivia sighed dramatically, setting her glass down. "Yes, James, you've been acting paranoid lately. Honestly, it's exhausting. If you can't trust me after all these years, maybe that says more about you than it does about me." Ah, there it was, the shift in blame. The subtle attack on his character. He'd read about gaslighting before, but he never thought he'd be a victim of it. Until Olivia turned it into an art form. She was good, he'd give her that. Her confidence was unwavering, her lies smooth as silk. In the past, he might have let it slide, convinced himself that maybe, just maybe, he really was overthinking things. But not this time. James had seen the signs, the late nights with vague explanations, the sudden uptick in work emergencies, the way her phone was always face down, her notifications silenced. He had caught her in small inconsistencies, little slips she quickly covered up. But it was Nathan's name that had finally shattered his illusions. A name she had sworn was nothing, just a friend, just a coworker. A name that had echoed in his mind ever since he'd installed the hidden camera. Tonight, she thought she had won. She thought she could dismiss him with a wave of her hand, that she could make him feel small and uncertain again. She had no idea. James reached for his laptop, flipping it open with a slow precision. His heart should have been pounding, but he was calm. Eerily so. Olivia raised an eyebrow, her smirk deepening in amusement. "What's this? Another one of your little theories?" James met her gaze, unreadable. "You sure about that?" He clicked play. And just like that, the color drained from her face. The moment the video began playing, Olivia's entire demeanor shifted. The confidence she had so carefully crafted slipped, unraveling like a loose thread on an expensive dress. Her smirk faded, her lips parting slightly as if to form an excuse, but no words came. James watched her closely, fascinated by the transformation. It was subtle at first, the way her fingers tightened around the stem of her wine glass, the way her jaw clenched just a little too hard. On the screen, the truth unfolded in high definition. The hidden camera, positioned perfectly in their own home, had captured it all. Olivia, laughing in hushed tones, leaning in too close to Nathan, whispering things James didn't even need to hear to understand. The way she touched him, casual yet intimate. The way she allowed him into the very space she had once called sacred with James. And then, the undeniable proof. The stolen kisses. The way Nathan's hands found their way onto her body with practiced ease. James had spent weeks pretending not to know, allowing Olivia to continue digging her own grave. He had watched her play her little games, gaslighting him, making him question his own sanity, her lies so well rehearsed that if he hadn't seen the truth with his own eyes, he might have believed them. But this was irrefutable. There was no talking her way out of this. A small gasp escaped Olivia's lips, barely audible. She reached out as if to slam the laptop shut, but James caught her wrist before she could. His grip was firm, not forceful, just enough to stop her from erasing what had already been exposed. "Don't," he said, his voice low, steady. "Watch it. I want you to see exactly what you've done." Her breathing quickened, panic flashing in her eyes. "James, this isn't what it looks like." "Oh, spare me," he cut in sharply, his patience evaporating. "You can't twist this, Olivia. You can't make me the villain. I sat here, night after night, wondering if I was going insane, doubting myself, doubting what I knew deep down, and all along, You were lying to my face." She shook her head rapidly, her hands gripping the table as if steadying herself. "James, please. Just listen." "Listen to what?" His voice was still calm, almost chillingly so. "More lies? More excuses?" On the screen, the footage continued. Olivia and Nathan moving from the couch to the bedroom. Their bedroom. James turned the volume up just a notch, just enough to make her squirm. Her face crumpled, her hands flying to her mouth. "Stop it, turn it off." "Why?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "Does it make you uncomfortable? Because I can assure you, Olivia, it's nothing compared to what I've felt these past months." She pushed the laptop away as if the sight of herself in betrayal was too much to bear. Her breathing was ragged now, uneven. I can explain." "Can you?" James leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Because I'd love to hear it, really. What possible explanation do you have for this?" Olivia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She was scrambling, reaching for any lifeline, any thread of manipulation that could save her. But there was nothing left to twist. The evidence was too strong. For the first time in years, James saw her for what she truly was. Panicked. Weak. Desperate. She wasn't the composed, untouchable woman she pretended to be. She wasn't in control anymore. And then, just as the weight of her downfall fully settled on her shoulders, another sound shattered the silence. A knock at the door. James smirked, standing up slowly. Perfect timing. He walked toward the entrance, deliberately taking his time. Olivia sat frozen, confusion mixing with fear on her face. As James reached for the handle, he glanced back at her one last time. You didn't think I'd go through this alone, did you?" The door swung open, and standing there, just as planned, was Nathan. The color drained from Olivia's face entirely. Nathan stood in the doorway, his cocky smirk faltering the moment he saw James. His eyes flicked to Olivia, then back to James, assessing the situation like a man realizing, far too late, that he had walked into a trap. He wore the same casual arrogance James had come to expect from him, the slightly unbuttoned dress shirt, the smug confidence of a man who believed he had nothing to fear. But that was before he saw Olivia's pale, stricken face, before he noticed the laptop still open on the table, the damning footage frozen on the screen. James took a slow step back, gesturing toward the living room. "Come on in, Nathan," he said, his voice laced with something dangerously close to amusement. "Olivia and I were just having a little discussion. You might want to be here for this." Nathan hesitated. His usual bravado wavered, but he stepped inside anyway, closing the door behind him. Olivia sat motionless, her hands clenched together in her lap as if she were trying to hold herself together. James noted the way she avoided Nathan's gaze. "James," Nathan began, forcing a chuckle. "What's going on here, man?" "Oh, you know," James replied, walking toward the laptop and turning it slightly so Nathan could see. "Just watching a little home movie. You might recognize the main characters." Nathan's eyes narrowed as he approached the table, and then, the moment of impact, his entire body tensed as he saw the screen. He blinked rapidly, his mind scrambling for an escape, a loophole, anything to undo what had just been revealed. "What the hell is this?" Nathan demanded, turning to Olivia. Olivia's expression was unreadable now, but James saw the way her fingers trembled against her thigh. She had been caught, and now she was calculating, trying to decide which side to take. Which lie might still save her? "Well," James prompted, folding his arms, "I'd love to hear how you two plan to explain this." Nathan shot Olivia a glare. "You told me he had no idea." James let out a small laugh. "Oh, she told you that, did she? And you believed her? You thought I was just some clueless idiot who wouldn't notice his wife sneaking around with the first overconfident bastard who came along?" Nathan's jaw clenched. "Look, James, this doesn't have to get ugly." James raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I think we passed ugly a long time ago, Nathan." He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "You see, I let this play out. I let Olivia talk down to me, make me question myself, make me feel like I was losing my mind. But I'm not the one who's lost here. That would be you two." Olivia finally spoke, her voice shaky but still trying to reclaim authority. "James, please, we don't have to do this like some revenge spectacle. I never wanted—" "Oh, don't—" James cut her off, his voice sharp. "Don't even try to act like you're taking the moral high ground now. Nathan exhaled loudly, clearly growing frustrated. What do you want, James? You want to punch me? Humiliate us? Fine. You win. It's done. James tilted his head, studying him. What do I want? He echoed. That's a good question. He let the words hang in the air, enjoying the way both of them shifted uncomfortably. He grabbed the laptop, turning it back toward himself, and then shut it with a quiet snap. Olivia exhaled as if she had been holding her breath. Nathan crossed his arms, waiting. James stood there for a moment, looking between them. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the room. James? Olivia called after him, confused. He didn't respond. Instead, he headed down the hallway to the bedroom, the place where he had shared his life with Olivia, the place where she had shattered everything. He grabbed the suitcase that had been sitting in the closet for days, packed and ready. He had planned for this moment. He had imagined it over and over again, wondering how it would feel to finally be free of the weight of her deception. Returning to the living room, he found them exactly as he had left them. Olivia perched on the edge of her seat, Nathan standing stiffly beside her. James placed the suitcase by the door, grabbed his coat, and then, as if an afterthought, turned back to Olivia. "You don't get to rewrite this, Olivia," he said quietly. "You don't get to turn this into some tragic misunderstanding or try to make yourself the victim. You did this. You lied. You manipulated. You thought you could get away with it." He glanced at Nathan. "And you were just dumb enough to believe she wouldn't turn on you the moment things got messy." Nathan scoffed. "Man, you think you're walking away from this as the winner? You're just a bitter guy with a grudge." James smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time in a long while. "Oh no, Nathan," he said, shaking his head. "I'm walking away from this with my dignity. That's more than I can say for either of you." And with that, he opened the door, took one last look at the life he was leaving behind, and stepped out. Behind him, Olivia whispered his name, but he didn't stop. He never looked back. The night air was cold against James's skin as he stepped out onto the quiet street. The weight that had been pressing on his chest for months had finally lifted, leaving behind a strange sense of clarity. He felt no rage, no sadness, only a deep, resounding finality. His footsteps were steady as he walked toward his car, the suitcase rolling beside him. The sound of the wheels against the pavement was the only noise in the stillness. Back inside, he knew Olivia and Nathan were likely frozen in place, still processing everything that had just happened. He imagined Olivia's face, her perfect, practiced composure cracking like fine porcelain. Nathan, ever the arrogant fool, would probably try to salvage his pride, puffing out his chest, muttering something about how none of this mattered. But it did matter. It mattered because they had built their betrayal on the foundation of James' supposed ignorance, and now they had nothing left to stand on. Sliding into the driver's seat, James exhaled, gripping the steering wheel. The house he had once considered his safe haven was now just another place, just another building. He had spent years making it a home, filling it with memories that, in the end, had been tainted by Olivia's deceit. As he stared at it one last time, a part of him expected Olivia to rush outside, to beg him to stay, to try and rewrite the narrative one final time. But she didn't. She knew it was over. James started the car, the quiet hum of the engine breaking the silence. He could leave now. He could drive away, put distance between himself and everything he had just torn apart. But there was one last thing he needed to do. With calm precision, he pulled out his phone and opened his email. A message sat in his drafts, one he had written days ago. He had hesitated before, unsure whether he should press send, but tonight there was no hesitation. He tapped the screen, and just like that, the email was out in the world, carrying with it the final nail in Olivia Nathan's coffin. The email wasn't to Olivia. No, that would have been too easy. It was sent to Olivia's closest friends, to her family, to the people whose opinions she cared about most. Attached were screenshots, timestamps, and of course the video. No long-winded explanation, no bitterness, just cold, hard evidence. He imagined her phone buzzing in the other room the moment she saw the subject line, "You should know the truth." He pictured the way her breath would hitch, the way her hands would shake as she opened it, realizing that her carefully crafted image was crumbling around her. Olivia had spent years ensuring she was seen as the perfect wife, the sophisticated woman who had everything under control. Now her dirty little secret was out in the open. James wasn't one for public humiliation, but he knew Olivia well enough to understand that this exposure, would shatter her in ways she never thought possible. She had thrived on deception, on maintaining a pristine reputation while living a double life. The worst part? She had always assumed she would never get caught. That assumption had been her greatest weakness. As he drove through the empty streets, his mind wandered to Nathan. What would he do now? Would he stay? Would he try to convince Olivia that they could weather the storm together? Or would he do what men like him always did, cut his losses and run? James smirked at the thought. Nathan wasn't built for chaos. He had enjoyed the thrill of sneaking around, of taking something that wasn't his, but now that it was all out in the open, he would crumble under the weight of it. James pulled into a hotel parking lot, grabbing his suitcase as he checked in for the night. He had no grand plans for revenge beyond what he had already done. He didn't need to watch Olivia suffer in real time. He didn't need to see Nathan's inevitable downfall. He had already won. By morning, Olivia would be dealing with the fallout. She would be calling people, trying to spin the situation, trying to claim it was all a misunderstanding. But the truth was undeniable. And James? He would be on a flight to somewhere new, somewhere that didn't carry the scent of betrayal. Standing in the dimly lit hotel room, he took one last look at his phone. Already missed calls from Olivia, texts from numbers he recognized, mutual friends, maybe even Nathan. He turned off his notifications, tossing the phone onto the bedside table. Tomorrow was the first day of the rest of his life, and for the first time in a long time, James felt free. Morning sunlight streamed through the sheer hotel curtains, casting soft golden hues across the room. James lay awake staring at the ceiling, his mind clearer than it had been in months. The weight of betrayal had finally lifted, replaced by a strange sense of peace. He had done what needed to be done. Olivia's lies had been exposed, Nathan's arrogance dismantled, and James had walked away with his dignity intact. His phone lay silent on the nightstand. He had turned it off the night before, unwilling to entertain the flood of calls and messages that were surely waiting for him. But now, as he reached for it, curiosity gnawed at him. What had unfolded in his absence? How had Olivia reacted? He powered it on and waited as the notifications came pouring in. 12 missed calls from Olivia. 4 from an unknown number, Nathan no doubt. Dozens of messages, each one more frantic than the last. James, please, just talk to me. It's not what you think, I swear. You're blowing this out of proportion. Let's handle this privately. James, everyone knows now. I can't fix this unless you talk to me. Please. He scrolled further, skimming through her desperate attempts to reclaim control. But there was no apology, no true remorse, just panic. That was Olivia, always more concerned with the consequences of getting caught than with the actual hurt she had caused. Then came the messages from mutual friends, some offering sympathy, others demanding to know if the rumors were true. A few were from Olivia's closest friends, women who had always played along with her self-righteous act. James, I don't know what's going on, but Olivia's a wreck. Please don't do anything you'll regret. Is it true? Did you really send that video to everyone? She's saying you're lying, that it's all been taken out of context. James shook his head, exhaling through his nose. Taken out of context? How exactly did one misinterpret a video of her tangled up with Nathan in their own home? The sheer audacity made him laugh. Cold, hollow, but amused nonetheless. Olivia would twist the truth until her last breath. His eyes flicked to the final set of messages, this time from Nathan. James, man, this is low. You didn't have to involve everyone. This is between us. You're acting like a child. Grow up and move on. Olivia was never happy with you anyway. Be a man and face me. James snorted. Nathan, still trying to act as if he held the upper hand, as if he wasn't the one who had been caught sneaking around like a coward. It was pathetic. And he was done engaging. James tossed his phone aside and rose from the bed, stretching his arms over his head. He had no intention of responding to either of them. There was no conversation to be had, no argument worth entertaining. He had given them the one thing they feared most, the truth, and now he was free of it. After a long, hot shower, he dressed, packed his bag, and checked out of the hotel. He had already booked a flight out of state, a one-way ticket to somewhere new, somewhere far from Olivia, from their home, from the life that had been tainted beyond repair. At the airport, as he waited near his gate, he took one last look at his phone. He didn't need to block Olivia or Nathan. Eventually they would give up. They would turn on each other. They would make a mess of themselves without his help. Instead, he did something much simpler. He deleted Olivia's number, then Nathan's, then every message, every missed call, every last trace of them. And then, as his flight was called for boarding, James stood up, slung his bag over his shoulder and walked away without a single glance back. Because for the first time in a long, long time, the past was exactly where it belonged. Behind him,